Good morning, Beenaji.
Good morning. How are you, Krishnapani ji?
Fine, absolutely fine.
Huh.
Shall we start with the prayer?
Yeah, it is 10:30. Yes, we can start. Yeah.
O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Om Bhur-Bhuvaswaha. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः। ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः। ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतङ्गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Good morning to all the participants.
Yeah. Good morning, Krishnapani ji.
We have, I think, done up to 24th verse. You read out the 25th verse commentary also.
Huh.
So we are going to take up the 25th one now.
Yeah, 25th.
Because
is
last
correct.
time we could not take it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll read the 25th verse. Beenaji, you kindly read the translation of it.
All right.
दंष्ट्राकरालानि च ते मुखानि दृष्ट्वैव कालानलसन्निभानि दिशो न जाने न लभे च शर्म प्रसीद देवेश जगन्निवास.
The translation: seeing thy terrific tusks and mouths ablaze with the fire, I have no sense of direction, nor do I find any comfort. Be kind and gracious, O God of gods, O home of the universe.
Yeah. See, this is another dimension of the cosmic vision where a terrible form is being displayed with long teeth and tusks and the face glowing and appearing as though it's all consuming fire of time. And therefore he says, Disho na jane na labhe cha sharma. So I'm not able to find the my own direction. That means I have lost my bearings. And nalabhe cha sharma prasida devesha jagannivasa. Be gracious, O God, he says, who is the abode of all the worlds. Here there are two interesting terms. Kalanala sannibhani is one word. Kalanala means the fire of time. And as I mentioned earlier, Sri Aurobindo has given the title of this particular chapter as the time the destroyer. He says it is the time, the destroyer, whose appearance seems to be terrible. And by seeing such fierce form, he says, I have lost my bearings. So time is an element of manifestation where it signifies the movement of creation, the movement of the whole, what is called as the phenomenal world. See, without the dimension of time, there would not be a creation at all. Space and time, from the creative principle point of view, are essential, but they are not fundamental in that sense in which the science talks about. For a long time, Western scientists have held the view that space and time are eternal and they are fundamental. Then it took somebody like Einstein to come and tell them that both are relative. But while they say that both are relative, they have not come to what is fundamental. From an ancient Indian perspective, motion has been said to be fundamental. So there is a theory called the reciprocal system of theory, which again talks about the fundamentality of what is called as motion. The whole creation was referred to in the Indian context as Gati, Agati, and Sthiti. Gati is motion. Agati is a form of dynamic balance, and Sthiti is that which is stable and fixed. This is what has been mentioned. I'll not go much into that aspect of it. But what is more important to recognize here is that, as Sri Aurobindo says, for Brahma, the creator is one of the Godheads seen in his body, he who keeps the world always in existence. For he is the guardian of the eternal laws, but is always to destroying in order that he may new create, who is time, who is death, who is Rudra, the dancer of the calm and awful dance, who is Kali with her garland of skulls, trampling naked in blood in battle and flecked with the blood of the slaughtered titans, who is the cyclone and the fire, the earthquake and pain and famine and revolution and ruin and the swallowing ocean. This is how he is pictured the whole thing. He talks about time and he says time is also death. And time is the destroyer. And he is personified as Rudra and as Kali. Another meaning of the term Kali is something which is black. Anything unknown is called as black. Time is an unknown element. Especially when you talk in terms of the future dimension, it is something totally unknown. So Kala has got this dual aspect of being time and also something which is inscrutable, which is dark and which cannot be known as to how and in what direction it moves. But one thing is very certain, that it will lead you to death. Anybody who is caught in this cycle, that means who is embodied, that body has death. So this is the movement towards death. And he is personified here as the fire of time, Kalanala. All consuming and ever consuming. It is inexorable. You can't stop time in the spatio-temporal, because the whole system is a spatio-temporal system. So while operating in this system, the question of stopping time or manipulating time doesn't arise at all. Maybe in some respects, in some small respects, you can manipulate, but beyond that, it's not possible at all, because it's inexorably going on and on and on and on, because it is a factor of the consciousness. Earlier, if you remember, in some other context, I have made a mention that the true delusion, the true Maya is that what is incessantly moving appears as stationary because of the relative nature of things. What is unknown or what cannot be actually perceived by the five senses is perceived by the consciousness as moving. That is with respect to space. Now, the earth is spinning around its own axis at a speed of almost 1600 kilometers per hour. That is twice the speed of a jet aircraft. But we don't sense it, because everything around us is relative. And what is not relative, or what is away from us, is so far away that we can hardly discern the movement. So this is one delusion. What is moving at such a tremendous speed appears to be stationary for us. And what actually doesn't have any tangible or intangible substance in it appears to be progressing in our consciousness. When we are awake, we are conscious of the fact that time is passing. You may discern it through external indicators, like the sunrise and the sunset, or the changes in the seasons, hot and cold and all that, you can discern it. But essentially, it is a function which is happening in consciousness. Suppose somebody is unconscious for 3-4 days. After once he gets up, he doesn't know what happened to those 3-4 days. Those 3-4 days are now lost for him. And he in that state of unconsciousness, he doesn't understand the movement of time at all. He cannot discern anything there. So this itself shows us that we are operating in a state, in a system which is delusive by nature. That's why it is called as Maya. The whole concept of Maya, the theory of Maya, has been developed not out of thin air. It is to denote the delusive nature of our mental perceptions. How it persists, how this delusion persists in every human being. And very interestingly, Arjuna says, I am able to see as though it is that fire of time which is destroying everything. and I am unable to find my bearings. Because I've lost. This is when you are seeing some dimension of some other dimension of time, obviously you will lose your bearings. You will not know where you are or what is happening and how things are going on and all those things. And very interestingly, he says, Nalabheja Sharma. There is an interesting word in Sanskrit, Sharma. Sharma means peace or pleasure or happiness. Why it is interesting is, I think in almost all states, starting from South Indian states onwards to North Indian states, everywhere, they use this term Sharma as a surname or as an appendix or appendage to their actual name. Especially if you find in the Telugu states, and I think even in Karnataka, they have a surname and a given name and an appendage which is called Sharma is also added at the end of the which essentially means peace or happiness. Adi Shankara says Sharma is Sukham. So I'm unable to find that peace or happiness by seeing this tremendous form of, a fierce form of what he calls as the fire of time, which is the destroyer. And very beautifully, poetically, Sri Aurobindo says, Rudra, the dancer of the calm and the awful dance, who is Kali with her garland of skulls, trampling naked in battle and flecked with the blood of slaughtered titans. So this is a very poetic way of expressing the idea of time as a destroyer. So this idea of time as a destroyer should be something which we should recognize on a daily basis from moment to moment in some respects. The reason for this is there are two aspects to it. One aspect is we continue to do what we are habituated with so much of impunity, thinking that we are going to live eternally. There is another delusion of the mind. Another delusion of the mind is it cannot imagine its own ending and it cannot imagine its own death, including the body. Including the body. Can you just hold on for a minute? So, this is a delusion which creates this problem for us. So, it is important to recognize every moment of our life that this is something which is going to bring about the ending of whatever I know. Again, to use a term of Jiddu Krishnamurti, it is the ending of whatever I know, ending of the known, which is the meaning of, which is the etymological meaning or a correct translation of the term Vedanta. Veda comes from the root with, to know. Anta means ending. So Vedanta means the ending of the known. So there is this possibility of the fact that everything which is known will come to an end is not registered in our minds. That has to be registered in our minds. that this progression of time as a destroyer of everything has to be recognized. Second important fact to be recognized is that every moment spent is lost in some way, in the sense we cannot go back in time and regain the lost time. So, how do we perform action in this moment which is conducive to the recognition of that ultimate reality or that eternal truth? Because that's a big, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. Every moment wasted, that means it's not a question of waste in the sense, see what I'm trying to say is more a case of lost time, that is lost. And our own inability to recognize the fact that this time is lost is something which can never be gained again, and unless it moves in the direction of a higher evolution in consciousness, from a cosmic perspective, it's a waste of time. Unless we recognize that, it's as good as wasting. And that's why we are caught in this cycle. So can we perceive an eternal or what I would call as a timeless dimension through this process of becoming attentive to the moment and directly perceiving what occupies our mind? That is where observation, meditation, contemplation, all these things come in that context only, where we are able to very attentively, with a kind of all-inclusive vision of things, are we able to perceive the direction or the action of the mind and see whether I am getting more and more entangled into this life as out of habit, or am I able to see some new dimension to the whole thing? Unless this happens, it means that unless this happens, it is certain that we will not come out of it. It is for sure that we will be stuck eternally in this, because it is cyclic. You are caught in a vicious cycle. So as long as you are on the periphery of things, as long as you are caught in this, within the circle and unable to go beyond the circumscribed limitation, it is not going to end at all. So that is what is to be perceived by us. That is precisely what is, as I said, time as a destroyer, as something inexorably moving in one direction only. Though it is cyclic, we don't sense it as something cyclic, we see that as a continuum, space-time continuum as they call it. So it is very, very important. See, this is what constitutes actual sadhana in one way. It is not a question of acquiring knowledge. It is not a question of knowing things. It is a question of imbuing. That means making the whole thing as a part of you. Making the whole view, the perception, as an integral part of oneself. That has to be seen. Otherwise, what happens is any number of lives. And that is precisely what Advaita Vedanta emphasizes when Adi Shankara says that vichara is the only way to acquire, I am not using the right time acquiring, but to come to jnana. And what is jnana? It is the removal of ajnana. Jnana per se is eternal in one way, like the Brahman, infinite. You come to it through a process of negation and removal of the veil of ajnana. As long as that is there, any number of millions of years also, we are not going to come out of it. We are going to get stuck there only, and nothing great is going to happen to anybody. That is the beauty of recognizing the nature of time. And also the recognition of the fact that life and death are not two separate things. Life and death are not two separate things. They are only two sides of the same coin. What we call as death is always chasing us, it is behind us. As we spend time, we are nearing death. So it is that association of life and death, which always is a unitary movement. In fact, in one context, Kalidasa puts it much more beautifully. He says, Maranam Prakriti Sharirinam Vikritir Jivanam Uchyate. He says, death is natural for all embodied beings. What is unnatural is life, because it is unknown. Life is always a challenge. Life is always filled with uncertainty. Life is always filled with a sense of fear, with a sense of anxiety, with a sense of foreboding, with a sense of hope and anticipation. There is no certainty in it. But when it comes to death, it is certain. What is uncertain is when it happens, it could be an uncertainty. But the fact that for all embodied beings, death is a natural process. So can we make life also equally natural? By recognizing the fact that life and death are not to be seen as two opposing entities or opposing aspects, but as one unitary movement. That is the beauty of it. That perception is what Vedanta is talking about. It's not a question of acquisition, but it's a question of relinquishing what is unnecessary, what is burdensome, what is creating this anxiety and fear and hope and anticipation and whatnot. That is fundamental to us. That's what we need to perceive. When such a this thing of time as a destroyer is revealed to Arjuna, he immediately lost his bearings. He said, I'm not able to find anything. I don't know in which direction things are happening, what is happening. The whole thing is a great mystery. That is the mystery of the Kathopanishad also. Nachiketa wants to know the mystery of death. He precisely wants to know what is this mystery of death, which doesn't spare anybody, which doesn't spare anything. That's what gives you immortality. Immortality doesn't mean that you live eternally with this body and with all this nonsense and with all these problems and all. No. Immortality is that living in a state of consciousness in which death, as we understand, does not operate at all. So that is what is important for us to recognize here. Then we will go to the next verse. Binaji, can you?
Maniji,
Yeah.
Maniji, I wanted to ask you something. Creation and, if there's no destruction, there's no creation, right?
Right.
So they are actually, that is God.
They
Both
go
of these
together.
things represent, that is. But, at every moment, we are actually, in a sense, we are dying, because then we are a different person every moment.
Yes.
Correct? But
Yes.
this is change. This is change. But
Yes.
we are, as human beings, we are so afraid of change.
We
We are,
reluctantly accept it. We know that, but we don't.
Yeah.
Our mind doesn't accept it so easily.
yeah, yeah.
What
No,
is the
I was
question?
saying that means we don't actually understand the whole,
No. See, when you the whole point is
yeah,
the mind is an artificially created entity,
right.
and we are constantly feeding that mind and making it stronger and stronger.
Hmm.
So it doesn't want to recognize its own ending. It doesn't want to die
Yeah, 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 true.
because it is an artificial creation
Hmm.
which is born out of delusion.
Okay. Hmm.
So it needs to protect itself in some form or the other to sustain and continue.
Right, right.
So what happens? So when the mind is dominating the whole process of our life, this is bound to happen. So do we see the nature of the mind? Do we see that the nature is the very nature of the mind is that it is a contrived contraption.
Correct. Hmm.
This is an artificial identity which I have created, which is useful at a certain level. I am using this instrument at a level and for a purpose for which it is not meant. It is meant for a certain purpose.
So it blocks us from actually seeing the truth as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Manayeva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayoh. As long as it is caught in this objective world, it is bound.
Right.
The moment it disconnects with this objective world,
Yeah.
a new vistas is opened, a new avenue, a new perception dawns, which is able to see something beyond itself. That's the problem. But every time the mind pulls us back into its own fold, because it will always lose its bearings when you are trying to explore something beyond it. So we are interested in knowing, sir, can I go to heaven like this with my body, with all my memories, with all my family, or with my all the things that I require, right? And there is another world where I can go and enjoy or get into that state, because it creates all these things. It is the mind which creates the hell, creates the heaven, creates so many other factors which are constantly dwelling upon it.
Yeah. So it needs name and form, the mind. So it'll never be able to see an abstract or anything beyond it.
Beyond
So we
it, and
have
it
to
doesn't
go.
want to. It doesn't want to.
It
Even
doesn't
if you
want.
are trying to explore it, it will scare you and then drag you back.
Right.
So it is important to first of all understand the nature of the mind. Once you understand the nature of the mind, then things may fall into place.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Ramchandranji, you wanted to say something?
Namaskar, Sarji.
Namaskar.
You are mentioning immortality is living in a state of consciousness where the death does not operate. What does it mean?
No, it has to be defined by us first, primarily. Death, are we talking death of the body or death of something else along with the body? Generally, our identification with the body is so close
Yes.
that when the body dies,
Yes.
we assume that we are also going to die, which the mind doesn't want to happen.
Mm.
So you have to see the nature of everything in operation. How the body operates, how the mind operates, how the emotions operate, how the whole system operates. That has to be perceived as it is.
Mm.
Unless that perception comes,
Mm.
nothing else is going to change. Everything will remain the same and we'll be caught in it. And that's what I was referring to when I said that Adi Shankara propounds the what is called as, I would not like to call it as a thesis, but I would like to call it as a matter which is of conclusive evidence for him,
Mm.
which is vichara. It is vichara which is going to bring about the transformation. Very deep down, at the root of its own consciousness, that transformation has to come. All other factors are only supporting factors. Whether you talk about meditation or dhyana or yoga or something else, they are supportive to the process of coming to a pure understanding of the reality of things as we know. Forget about the unknown and the ultimate reality and all those things are leave them. But do we know completely what is there as it is in manifestation? Do we know ourselves? Do we know the million ways in which the mind deceives itself and operates in us?
Mm.
How the mind chatters, how the mind creates illusions, how the mind creates its own imaginary world. Do we recognize that? Unless we come to that recognition and pay our complete attention to it, it is not possible to go beyond it.
True.
That is the problem. Yes, sir?
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay. Then can we go to number 26? I'll read the shloka. Binaji, you can read the translation. अमीचत्वां धृतराष्ट्रस्य पुत्राः सर्वे सहैवावनि बालसङ्घैः भीष्मो द्रोणः सूतपुत्रस्तथासौ सहास्मदीयैरपि योधमुख्यैः. You have to unmute.
Haniji, 26th and 27 is together.
Okay, no problem. I'll read that also. Vaktrani te tvaramana vishanti damshtra karalani bhayanakani kechid vilagna dashanantareshu sandrishyante churnitair uttamangaihi.
All the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with the companies of the kings and captains Bhishma, Drona, as well as the Karna, Sutaputra, along with also our chief warrior heroes, unto thee rush in haste and enter into thy mouths that are frightful with terrific tusks. Some of them are seen with crushed heads, caught and stuck in the gaps between thy teeth.
So, the cosmic form also needs some dental floss and toothpick or something to remove all the heads which are stuck in the in between the teeth. There's a very beautiful expression actually. See, there are two things in these two verses. Arjuna is able to see that all the sons of Dhritarashtra along with all the rulers and kings and others who are fighting on their behalf, on behalf of the Kauravas, entering into the mouth of Sri Krishna and going to their own death. Especially he mentions three people, Bhishma, Drona and Sutaputra. See, the term Sutaputra is derogatory, actually. Karna is referred to as a Sutaputra. Sutaputra actually means a lowly born person, a person who is born to somebody who tenders to horses and chariots. So still you see the remnants of ill will and some kind of hatred where you are not willing to address him by his name, but more addressing Karna by his lineage. So you see, Arjuna sees him as his main opponent. And he knows that Bhishma and Drona are much superior to him. And they are quite aged and they are in the status of a guru. Both are his gurus. Because one is his grandfather, the other one is a direct guru of Arjuna. So he is afraid of them also because they are much more powerful and they are the ones who tended him, brought him up when he was young, and they taught him, Drona taught him the skill in archery and other things. And the third fellow is a direct opponent, which in so many respects is on par with him or sometimes superior to him also in some respects. So once when he sees that all these three people are also rushing into the mouth of death, he is becoming slowly more and more confident of winning the war. As I said, everyone, when it comes to a life and death situation, life and death in the sense, your own existence, for everyone in the battle of life, he has his own agenda, he has his own purpose, he has his own way of looking at things. It's not easy to give up. So Arjuna has his own agenda. He started by saying, why should I kill all these people who are relatives and elders and related to him in the form of uncles and grandfathers and so and so and so on. But there was also a lurking doubt in his mind whether he could win over these people, actually defeat them in battle. But if you see, the story of Mahabharata reveals that all these three people were killed through deception. Bhishma was defeated by bringing Shikhandi into the picture and shooting arrows standing behind Shikhandi. Bhishma had taken a vow not to attack or use his skill in battlefield and archery and so on against a woman. Now the Shikhandi was that. There's a great story for that, Amba, Ambika, Ambalika and all that. We'll not go into that story, that's it. So he was deceived that way, or he was subdued by bringing in this character called Shikhandi. Then when it comes to Drona, a false message was given that his son Ashwathama has been killed. So this disinformation, misinformation, all these things have always been there as a part of the human psyche. So Dronacharya was killed in the battle through that disinformation and creating distress in him. Then when it comes to Karna, his chariot wheel was stuck in the mud and his movement was severely curtailed. And he got down the chariot to pull his wheel out of it. Then Sri Krishna says, you now kill that fellow, because this is the only opportunity to kill him, because you can't directly confront him in battle. He is equal to you. Then a beautiful logic is brought about. Karna says this is not according to the dharma of a battle. When a person is not in a state to retaliate and fight, you can't kill such a person in battle. Then Sri Krishna presents a counter logic to him and says, you are a person who have broken the dharma several times. Dharma doesn't apply only in the battlefield. It applies to every aspect of life. How did you kill Abhimanyu? Is it Raja Dharma or Kshatriya Dharma to kill a mere boy by Athirathas, Maharathas, and such great warriors, not one or two? All of you surrounded him and killed him. What happened to your dharma at that time? Okay. Now let us go back further. When Draupadi was being disrobed in the open court, you enjoyed the sight. Did you not know at that time that it was against dharma? And see the beauty of it. All the three were present. Bhishma was there, Drona was there, Karna was there when the disrobing of Draupadi was enacted in the open court. So you cannot claim that as though you are a great upholder of dharma and say that somebody else is doing adharma. There is a legal maxim which says you cannot approach the fount of justice with dirty hands. You cannot be guilty of something else and seek justice in some other context. You can't come to the fountain of justice to wash your dirty hands and claim that you have become clean and therefore now you have the right to question everybody and seek mercy and justice from everybody. No. So if you had upheld dharma throughout your life, you would not have come to this situation at all. So technically, though all the three of them were killed in the battle, in the war, through what is called as a form of deception or applying certain means which are questionable. But it was Sri Krishna who directed it and said, your purpose is not to have a discussion on dharma and adharma now at this time. Your purpose is to kill the enemy in whatever form, in whichever way is possible, you kill him. You find his weakness and then kill him. You find him when he's in a weak situation and then you kill him. All righteousness, all dharma applies to persons who are dharmic on both sides. It can't be unilateral and it can't be one-sided and it can't be, nobody can claim that dharma is a matter of right when you have not upheld it in your own life. Sri Krishna has also got an ulterior motive and a purpose here in revealing to Arjuna in his cosmic form that all the sons of Dhritarashtra, including Duryodhana, are killed in the battle, along with Bhishma, Drona, and Karna. Now, when he comes to know, okay, when all these fellows are going to die, I don't see myself in this process of dying. So I'm going to win the war. So that boosts his confidence. Okay, that boosts his confidence, and now he is confident of victory, and he says, okay, yeah, okay, after this cosmic form, when I actually go to war, I'm bound to win this war because I have actually literally seen the future, what is happening. And that too, another interesting thing that is given in verse number 27, I draw your attention to the term Tvaramana Vishanti. Tvaramana Vishanti means they are actually rushing to enter that huge, awesome mouth which is chewing off their heads. Churnitair Uttamangaihi. The face, the head is called as the Uttamanga. See the beautiful term. See, that's the beauty of Sanskrit. The face, the head is called as Uttamanga for two reasons. One is it is at the top, isn't it? It is at the topmost part of the body. So it is in an Uttama state. Let's say physiologically that's what it is. Now coming to the psychological thing, any human being without a face, however beautiful the body may be, would be terrible to see, isn't it? However beautiful one may be down below the neck, but if you don't have the face or the head, it would that body would appear terrible. You can't see that body because that's the importance of face, because that is the index of the mind and that's the index of one's own whole being. You can make out so much from the face of a person. However, comparatively ugly the face may be, it doesn't really matter. Having a face is most important. So that's why it is called as Uttamanga. And these Uttamangas, these heads are churnitaihi, they are being crushed. They are being powdered. Churna means a powder. The heads are being powdered and crushed in between the teeth. And he says very interestingly, some of them are sticking between the teeth also. Dashanantareshu sandrishyante churnitaangai uttama churnitai uttamaangai. The cosmic form is so large, so huge, that heads are appearing like small food particles which get stuck between the teeth. And here, that's I wanted to draw your attention to that phrase, Tvaramana Vishanti. Tvaramana Vishanti is that you are actually rushing into the mouth of your own death, rushing into that awesome mouth in which the heads are being crushed. So you see, it exactly means where we are rushing towards our own death. With that kind of foolishness, foolhardiness, and that kind of ignorance, that our actions are actually making us rush and to our own death and fall into that terrible mouth of the cosmic form that is revealed to Arjuna. So this is what is important. It's not that somebody is forcing you to die or somebody is creating situation to die. You yourself are inviting your own death. You yourself are rushing towards it because you have been on the side of adharma. You have repeatedly violated that dharma of maintaining balance and equilibrium and peace and harmony in this world, each one trying to pursue his own hidden agenda and creating more and more havoc, that has automatically resulted in rushing to one's own death. That is the beauty of this, the expressions which are used. And as I said, the hidden agenda also is that now I see that all my opponents are dead or going to die, or I'm actually seeing them in a procession leading into that terrible mouth of the cosmic form, and their lives are ended. So I am now confident of victory. And second thing is, all these people are moving in such a rush, in such a hurry. They are actually going and falling into their own death. But that is indicated by this cosmic form to Arjuna, to boost his confidence and get rid of his dejection and depression and doubts on victory or defeat and all that. So now he sees that, so he comes out with more confidence, saying that yes, now things are actually moving in a direction of upholding dharma. Yes, sir, we can stop here. Then we can take up the next 3 or 4. And in fact, in the next 2 verses, he also mentions that beautiful this thing of these fireflies rushing and falling in the fire. Jwalanam patanga vishanti. They are as though that they are the patanga is that firefly which is rushing in and falling into the fire. That's how all these people are seen. Yeah. Any questions for discussion? Then we may take it up.
No,
Yes,
it
sir.
was,
Janaki Ramji.
no, it was very beautifully explained, those 2 verses. My only thought is it also indicates yes, time, death, and what is the mystery of life and all that is clear, but it also shows the omnipresence or vastness of the
Yes.
absolute.
Yes. See, it is operating, everything is operating in that omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent being. That's what he says, no, in the 7th chapter and other chapters also he says, everything is in me. I need not necessarily be in everything. I am in something only when you recognize it. See, can I really truly say that he is in me? Unless I recognize his presence, I cannot claim that he is in me. But he can claim that I am in him because everything created is in him. That's the only difference. In the 7th chapter, that's the beautiful thing which brings about. Here also the same thing is brought about.
Demonstrated.
Demonstrated
Visually.
again. Actually, physically, visually demonstrated, as you rightly said. Yes, sir. Umeshji,
Yes, sir.
tell me.
2 things, sir.
Yes.
The one thought is that why it is displayed as a fearful form, cosmic form, and not loving form, number 1. The Almighty God represents the love.
Okay.
And so why there is no display of love or compassion and mercy? That's point
Okay.
1. That's thought 1.
Okay.
Thought 2, when Arjuna sees that all his opponents are rushing to his mouth and they are getting crushed, did he also see some of his supporters going into the mouth?
Yeah, so that's why he says no. Sahaivavani Pala Sanghai. He is seeing so many other kings and rulers also dying in the process.
So is this really a kind of a, let's say, poetic expression? Because death, the body remains where it was. It's only the consciousness that goes out of the body, the shape and form. The body does not get crushed or does not get manipulated. It stays. It decays over the period of time. But
No, it can be killed, no, it can be maimed, it can be destroyed. You can burn it, you can kill it, you can destroy the body in so many ways and all that. But that's
or
anyway
is it
process of the battle.
or is it just because those who follow adharma, their death is so tragic? Or
Yes,
is it
yes.
for
See,
everyone who dies
as I
goes through
said,
that?
as I said in the beginning itself, see, everybody has come with some agenda, sir, including Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna also has come to the battle with his own agenda. But he knows a much, much higher purpose. And he is not disturbed by anything that is going to happen or is likely to happen and all that. But he has an agenda. His agenda is to re-establish dharma from a cosmic point of view. But everybody else who participated has come with his own agenda. Somebody had enmity towards somebody. Somebody had taken a vow to kill somebody. Somebody thought that this fellow has my main intention is to kill so and so in this war and all that. So everybody comes with an agenda. So, therefore, nobody is exempt from this. Number one. Now, coming back to your this thing of why it is fearful. See, the form itself is all inclusive and is something which is, which comes with everything in it. There is no distinction as this as good and this as bad, this as loving and this as awesome, this as terrible and that as very pleasing. All that is a projection of the mind. See, for somebody, something terrible may be entertaining, isn't it? For somebody, suppose there is a sadist fellow. For him, if something terrible is happening, he may enjoy it. He may like to see more of it. Okay. So, why his terrible form and why not his loving form is not the issue at all. The issue is, what is it that Arjuna is seeing in that form? Arjuna has seen certain aspects of the form which are benign, which are good, which are all comprehensive, and that. And on the other side, he has also seen the worst part of it. That means if a person with limited perception is focusing on something, he will only see what he wants to see. It's not as though he can see the whole thing impartially. Because he himself is limited. So he can only see that terrible form because that his sight has fallen on that aspect of that cosmic vision which was attractive to him and which he was very eager to know. You understand the difference?
Yes, but if I remember right, it was Arjuna who pleaded to see his cosmic form and his divine form.
His agenda is to see and know who is going to win and who is going to lose. That
Was
fellow is
that the
cunning.
agenda?
That was the agenda.
Okay.
That was the main agenda, and therefore he went on praising it. Do you think that Krishna did not know it? He showed him what he wanted to see.
Oh, I took it other way around. If it was
No.
Krishna who showed his form, and he chose to show the form with the weapon in his hands, etc., and not with the smile on his face and
Sir, see, you are in a battlefield. smiling and playing the flute, rag malkons on the flute, and all that is not going to help.
That is true.
You see,
Can I add
you
something here after you finish?
yeah, please, sir, please. I am finished. You can add. It's only an open discussion. Yeah.
No, just two things. One is Arjuna says, I am unable to see the beginning, end, and middle.
Yeah.
So we don't know whatever portions were shown to him, or he was able to see only. First thing.
Yes.
Second is we have all traveled.
Yeah.
Okay, mostly I have traveled in my work in Europe. But when I went to US, the hotel room was on 30th floor. And there are another 20 floors above that. At night, sometimes it used to sway. I never went anywhere near the window. I always used to keep away 4 feet away from window.
Yeah. You did not want to have the cosmic vision of the city there. You see, that's what happens. The point is that you approach Krishna with a particular motive, he will fulfill your motive. Because his purpose is something different, sir. So that is the basic factor that he wanted to see what will be the outcome of this war. That was shown to him. Very interestingly, the killing of the what do you call as Abhimanyu was not shown to him. He would have been dejected. My son is also going to die in this process. Yes, see, that is the blindness which acts. You don't want to see it, you will not see it. What you wanted to see? You wanted to see these three fellows dying. Duryodhana, Dushasana, and all those fellows I can handle. I cannot handle these three people. So I am just very keenly watching and seeing whether these people I can see somewhere, whether they are dying or not. And he saw that he died. Because he was terribly afraid of these three people in the war. And rightly so. See, however skillful and however courageous and valorous Arjuna was, still he knew Bhishma, what he was, what he is. And Drona was his direct teacher. He was his best student and he learnt under him. And as I said, Karna was his worst enemy with equal capability. So you see the beauty of things in evolution. This is how it happens.
Krishnapani ji, namaste.
Yes, sir. Namaste, Dr. Sana.
Yeah, it's a new way of understanding the time concept so beautifully. Yeah. See, I have been talking about time to youngsters as a facilitator. It creates wonders in life. But the way the narration happened in this verse is moment to moment, we are proceeding towards destruction, death.
Yes.
Only real living is no time zone, that is now.
Right.
Can we go into a state of now so that at least bits of living happens before we proceed over a period of time to death?
You see, there is no death actually. Death is of the instrument which we call as the body. See, we are so closely, as I already mentioned, we are so closely associating ourselves with our body, thinking that along with this body, I am also going to die.
Yes.
That is an illusion. That is the fallacy.
True.
Second point is, I mentioned some time back in the Sanat Sujatiya, there is a very beautiful thing in the Udyoga Parva of the Mahabharata, where Sanat Sujatiya, the Sanat Sujata has a dialogue with Dhritarashtra. where he very
Okay.
clearly says that, sir, according to me, inattention is death.
Oh,
Any moment in which you are inattentive
is death.
is death. That means you are moving closer and closer to death.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So being in that state of awareness, in the state of that alertness and that state of attention is itself immortality.
Yes. Yes.
But we carry our baggage, no sir. Into
Yes,
every future moment, I carry my entire baggage. I am so and so, so and so. I have so and so. I am having all these things. I carry my entire baggage into every moment, and that baggage is the one which creates this impediment and brings into a state of helplessness where we are unable to live fully attentively in the moment.
Yes.
That's what is the problem.
Now,
But as you rightly said, when you are addressing children, it is important to tell them that time is a great facilitator. Time is a great teacher. Time is something which cannot be regained and therefore should be used in the best possible manner. That is that psychologically, when children are in that state, it is that you are being a teacher and you have spent all your life in education, children's education and all that. Your perception is right. But there is this other dimension also of time as a destroyer, time as a moving closer and closer to one's own destruction and waste of time. Waste of time in the sense you're not focusing on the purpose for which you are here, because we do not mostly understand the purpose of life itself. So that is important for us. So we are all at an age and in a state of mind where we need to see the other dimension of time and look back and see how much we have wasted and how much we are continuing to waste.
beautiful.
Okay.
Inattention is like a death state. So to be alive, you need to be attentive in the now.
That's all.
Beautiful.
That's why he says pramado vai mrutyumiti bravimi. Pramada means inattention. In Telugu, the word pramada means accident. Why? How does an accident happen? When you are inattentive.
Apaghata.
Apaghata. See, when you are inattentive, an accident happens.
Yes.
So that is the derived meaning of the word pramada.
Oh, pramada, correct.
That is the derived meaning of pramada as an accident, because basically, etymologically, the meaning is inattention. But I don't know, in Tamil, this word has become, has a positive connotation. Pramadama irukku. Pramadama is something which is out of the way, out of the blue. Isn't it, sir? Janaki Ramji?
Romba pramadam alaga irukadu.
Yeah.
Romba
So
inattention is Gavanakurai.
Gavanakurai.
Gavanam is attention.
Yeah.
Correct. Is inattention.
But I am trying to find out how pramada has become a good word in Tamil. Yes. So you describe something as very, wonderful or very out of the way.
Tamil came from before ancient wisdom.
So you can find some of these meanings reversed.
Actually, Gadodgaja used pramadam. Kalyana samayam sadam kaigarigalum pramadam.
That is good. Meena Nirulaji also knows Tamil. She studied Tamil for a long time. Yeah. She is from Tamil Nadu.
Romba pramadam.
Meena ji.
Is pramada laziness also?
Pramada is?
Laziness also?
I couldn't get you.
Laziness.
Laziness, yeah, laziness in the sense you are inattentive, therefore you are lazy. Those are all derived meanings, but essentially the root meaning is inattention.
Inattention. Okay. Thank you.
So anything else, sir? Anything further? Umesh, your questions are answered.
Saji, I have a question.
Yes, please.
What comes to my mind sometimes is Krishna being a Mayavi, could it be that he just tricked Arjuna by showing a hologram?
Yeah, obviously. You see, what I told you, no, whatever you wanted to see, I am showing you. See, like our own mind, sir. So if suppose I am a drunkard, there may be 100 items in which there are 2 bottles of whiskey also. I'll miss the 99 items and my sight will directly fall on that whiskey bottle because that's my mindset.
Very true, sir. Very true.
So
I just wanted to
that's
tell a personal experience. My Sambandhi came here. He wanted to see the CSD canteen.
Okay.
I took him there, and he just cannot move away from the bottles were kept.
Yeah.
All the time he was there only.
Yeah, his purpose is clear, no, sir. So he wanted that. And whenever it is given with huge discount in the CSD, you would like to carry more than what you normally require also. That's precisely what happens. It's all human psychology, sir. This is all, you see, that's why the Mahabharata is a beautiful study in human psychology. The whole of Mahabharata, you can see men of all psychological states of mind.
True.
Very beautiful way of. And Vishnu, being the organizer, the person who is sustaining the whole thing, has to be Mayavi. There is only Vishnu Maya. There is no Brahma Maya and there is no Maheshwara Maya. There is only Vishnu Maya, which you require when the whole process is ongoing process is there and I have to manage things. Mahabharata is a beautiful lesson in management also.
True. Very true.
That is the beauty of it. Okay, sir. I think we are already 11:47. Thank you so much, Sajni ji.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, may I request you to kindly close the session?
Thank you so much, Mr. Krishnapani ji, for those insightful discussions on these 2 verses. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Before I say the Loka Samasta, I would like to tell everyone that this evening we've got Vani talking to us, and she'll be talking to us on Sat Darshanam of Sri Ramana. All the others, I think, are on the WhatsApp, so I'm not going to say what we have every week. So I'd like each and every one of us to really focus on good health, peace, love as we end this session. We will end it with the Loka Samasta.
No Atma Bodha, no?
Sunday it's not there. This Sunday, we said we are going to, because of the program in the school. And maybe, Binaji, you can discuss and find out if we can have instead of completely missing it out, if it's convenient on any weekday also, it's okay with advance information, we can have it on a weekday. I think most of us are, for all of us, all days are Sundays.
Yes, most of us.
Except for a few, maybe 1 or 2.
All right, I'll check.
You just check out so that we can.
That's easier.
Yeah, because again, why I am saying that is 14th may not be possible to have again. 14th next Sunday also it will not be possible because I am traveling.
Okay.
So we will have instead of Sunday, we can have it on a weekday and continue the study instead of giving the gap.
Okay. All right. Okay, Krishna Paniji. I'll check with Ravi for both the days and
Yeah.
we'll see what to do. Yeah.
And you can give an advance notice of at least a day or two, and we can have that. Okay.
Those who
Yeah.
attend are here, we can decide, then check with Ravi. Saturday, Monday, Tuesday.
Monday, Tuesdays, we don't have programs, so we can have it
So
on
Monday,
Monday.
one of the 2 days we can have it.
Yes,
So
because there are no
Monday
other
morning.
programs.
Either
Monday
Monday
morning
morning or
okay?
instead of Sunday morning. If it's Monday morning, fine. If it's fine
Yeah.
with everybody, I am also ready.
No, sir, we'll do Monday morning.
Yes,
Monday
So
I
we'll
have.
have Monday morning at 10:30.
Yes.
No, sir, Tuesday.
Yes.
Let's call it on Tuesday.
Meena Nirulaji says Tuesday.
Yes.
If it's not, if other, it's okay. Tuesdays is also for the others. We can have it on Tuesday also. No?
Yeah, Tuesday is fine. Mangalavar.
Yeah.
so we can
Okay.
ask Ravi for Tuesdays.
Yeah. Tuesday morning 10:30. Tentatively. Tuesday. This
This
Tuesday is
Tuesday
fine.
and the week after that also.
The week after that, I'll let you know. Week after that, because I'm traveling for a couple of days,
Okay.
we can have it on some other day. We'll just check it up. Okay.
Okay.
And everyone,
This week we will have it on Tuesday morning at 10:30. That is 9th of February. Okay. Meena Nirulaji, specially scheduled for you.
so you better
Sajini
join
and I
me now.
have a program on Tuesdays, but I don't know what we'll do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right, Sajini?
Tuesday is little difficult.
Yeah,
Nirulaji.
Tuesday is
So we have it
difficult
on
for-
Monday then.
Yeah,
Monday
Monday
is the
I'm
right,
fine.
right
Yes,
thing.
because 3
Monday.
people are finding it difficult. So we'll have it
Meena
Monday.
Nirulaji, please make it convenient on Monday. देखिए आप.
Monday.
Yes, you miss your other program, Meena.
Anyway, it's okay. So Monday, if it's fine, I have no problem. Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday is fine then.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll do Monday.
8 at 10 o'clock or 10:30.
We can do 10 o'clock.
I don't mind.
Okay, fine.
10 o'clock is fine.
Monday.
Also, 10 yeah.
All right. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
You can do the Loka Samastha, Sajini ji. Sajini ji. I don't know. Is she? Yeah. Can you do? Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Are you able to hear us? That's the problem.
Tomorrow, and we have Ken Pram. Klein.
Your voice is breaking, Sajini ji.
So we have this weekend program. Please do it tomorrow afternoon. I think there's something with the internet. The lights have just gone off, so it's an internet problem, I think.
Now we are able to hear you.
Yes, please do come. We will. Bhavantu Loka Samasta Loka Samasta
Bhavantu.
Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Shri Krishna Arpanam.
Thank you.